Okay, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever in the world you are. This is the Bridge Researchers connecting conscientiology researchers around the globe. This is an initiative from ISIC in partnership with CEAEC. Okay, and we are going to just review a little bit first about what is the project, who is ISIC, and then we are going to hand over this presentation to Simone Mucida, who is sharing her self-research today. Okay. So, who is ISIC? For anyone that it's new on the uh, on the on the system here. ISIC is Interassistantial Service for the Internationalization of Conscientiology. It's a non-profit organization run by volunteers formerly within the ICC, which is the International Cosmoethical Conscientiological Community. Okay, and ISIC has the status of pre-conscientiocentric institution. Okay, ISIC operates under the consciential paradigm and stimulates personal experimentation, rationality, discernment, and growth based on directly lucid, personal, multidimensional experience, and not on any kind of belief or dogma. And on this way, we are going to start today with the Bridge project. That's a project that has been created to bring together researchers of conscientiology from all over the world to facilitate an exchange of knowledge and its interassistantial multidimensional experience. This takes place every first Sunday of the month on a free and online lecture where a speaker presents a topic of self-research. Today is the resuming of the activities these Bridge researchers, original with the name Bridge Research, ran between 2016 and 2018 with 21 web meetings. And today, thanks for joining us. We are going to have Simone Mucida with the symbiotic relationship between intra and extraphysical gossip and the paradox of utmost self-aggression. Let me just introduce Simone before I hand over the word to her. Simone has been volunteer of Conscientiology since 1995 and an instructor for almost 2 decades. She is currently a volunteer at Encyclosapiens Institution, dedicated to the studies and dissemination of the verbets of Encyclopedia of Conscientiology, where this research was first published. She has a degree in psychology from California State University of Los Angeles and has been working in human resource business administration management for different types of organization and business. She has been studying and researching negative and detrimental and multidimensional aspects and effects of gossiping within her own life as well with other individuals, lives, and groups of different sizes for more than 10 years. So quite experience on this subject. Simone, thanks for accepting the invitation from the Bridge researchers, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marcelo. Thank you very much for inviting me and to your initiative to restart this group. I think this is a wonderful project, and I think we can all grow a lot from having a platform and having a place that we can all come and share our individual research, where we not only have the opportunity to share with others, but to listen to other researchers, right? So it's a pleasure to be here. I would like to start with the principle of disbelief, because this is like the principle of conscientiology, right? It's one of the things that we would like to reinforce. And that is that do not believe in anything. Experiment, have your own experiences. So anything that we discuss here is based on my experience, is based on my research, and I invite you to have your own experience. Next. Okay, so we're going to go straight to the point, right? So the way we define, in conscientiology, we define gossiping as something negative. So I'm going to read to you how we define it, and that's the approach we're going to be taking it. I'm saying this because there's a lot of people, a lot of research, not as much as the negative side of gossip. There is quite a few research that try to bring gossip as being something positive. Our approach in conscientiology, it's not, right? It's anti-cosmoethical, and we're going to have, that's what we're going to be discussing here today. So intraphysical gossip is any type of malevolent. I like this word, so that's why I chose it, consciously chose it. Malevolent, casual, or unconstrained conversation or reports done by a female or male intraphysical consciousness about other consciousness not present, typically involving details that are not confirmed as being true. People do lie too, right? So I like it to question this. Would you say in front of the person? Because a lot of people have questioned, oh, is this gossip or oh, it's not? So if you would not say in front of a person or directly to that person, in my understanding, it is gossip, okay? So we're gonna leave it with that. So we can move on. So we're gonna discuss a little bit about gossip, guys, and the things that I have been experienced, that I have noticing, and based on my observations, as we mentioned before. So, and then later on, we're gonna have a time for us to discuss. So write down anything you would like to ask, and then we can discuss. So pathological societies day to day, right? For me, I see this as being a sort of, it's common. That's why I put this there, right? Our society, it is pathological. We are in a, as some people described, right? Our dear friend Valdo, some people describe it as a hospital school, right? Sometimes it's more hospital than school. But so the day-to-day, it's so common, it's so prevalent, so present, that it is the day-to-day. People don't even notice, right? And this is, if it's other in different groups and in different instances in our families, at work, and so on and so forth. So it is also a psychosomatic curiosity. Factology, it's a study of facts. And I use that when I wrote my verbete, or the entry in Conscientiology. This work has been published in the Encyclopedia of Conscientiology. And so a lot of this that we're going to be discussing here, that I'm going to be presenting, it's written on the verbete. So psychosomatic curiosity, because I feel like the society, the social media, all of that, there's a lot of curiosity, but it's very psychosomatic. It's very emotional, right? People are not curious about something that is more mental, somatic, or maybe they're like, can I learn something else about what's going on in the universe? They describe something else. It's very little about ideas, and it's more about people. And we're going to have a good quote that you've probably heard, but we're going to discuss about that a little bit later. False friendships, or friendships that are based on gossiping. Not all friendships. I have friends, and even friends that sometimes you don't talk too much, but you know that it's friends. When you meet, you catch up. You just catch up with that person. But I'm saying false friendships because sometimes you can say something, you discuss something, you have a friend, but the person, either the relationship is based on that, every time you talk to the person, you gossip. That this is very common in work and family, everywhere. And, or that the person uses you, right? So you think it's a friend, but it's not. So another thing, it can be also a habit that is being crystallized for millennia, meaning that, for thousands of years, it's a bad habit. The person has this habit, and it's very hard to change. So the person has to make a lot of, a strong decision to change and understand the negative effects, usually understanding the negative side of it usually helps us, right? Then it's very, I wrote this because when I was writing the verbiage, it came to me. It's a classic, right? The gossip that we see in history, in monarchical instance, and where, you know, they use defamation. It's not even true, or maybe they add something on top of it, or whatever that might be. I'm saying this because it's something that we carry from our past, right? If we study evolutionary psychology, some people try to bring that approach that because it is an evolutionary trait that we used to stay gathering and chit-chatting, and that the gathering, that talking with another person it's a part of being social. Like, we don't need to talk about another person to be social, right? So that is a habit. It's a bad habit, I would say. So, and then another aspect that I think is relevant is the pseudo-passive listener, also that I observed. And this, you see, that has to do with the overall research, because when you are passive, or when you can be a listener. So you are that pseudo-passive because you are permitting the person to say whatever they want about someone else, and you are not saying it per se, but you are an accomplice of a crime, right? If we're going to be a little dramatic here, but you are a passive listener, so you are a pseudo-passive because you are being active, right? That's my point. You are allowing that to happen, because a person cannot gossip by herself. Well, we'll see that can also be possible when we talk about the extraphysical gossip, right? Okay, but let's move on. Okay, I feel also during the, in the studies of facts, that I found out that when I was observing, right, and I found that it lacks the theory and the practice of interassistantiality. How can I want to help someone, but then I'll gossip about someone else? So if I want to help, if I'm applying the theories, so then I'll have to practice that with everyone. So for instance, we'll help our families, but then at work, we gossip about someone else, right? So that kind of thing. Multidimensionally speaking, this is like really, really detrimental, right? So we'll get to that in a little bit. So lack of self-criticism. And I find that the lack of self-criticism was because if I'm criticizing someone else, I might be using my next point, which is mechanism of defense, that I have not realized. So I pinpoint the traits, and we're going to go over that, but just for a little bit here. But so if I'm criticizing someone else, I have to know myself pretty well first. If I know myself pretty well, I probably won't be criticizing anyone, because I know that I have my traits that I need to work on, and my focus is so much on me that not in an egocentric way, but that I'm working on focusing so much on myself so that I don't have time or interest in be talking about another or thinking about another, unless it's when I'm doing some sort of assistance. So this is the ideal condition, right? So the gossip monger, as I call it lacks self-criticism. The mechanism of defense, it goes with that, of course, is out-corruptions and anti-cosmoethical heterocritics, right? It goes with that. There is also a sense I observed myself, and there is a sense, and sometimes a sense of superiority when making criticism to other people, when gossiping about other people. So people feel a sense of superiority because they know something, or they know something that the other person did, or they feel entitled when they say they see like a mechanism of defense of another person. So that brings them also, and this has a huge repercussion extraphysically also, because the person is not alone, and that sense of superiority, it's also an illusion, right? So it's a mental and an emotional state, which is illusion. It's pretty much that's how I describe it. So personal prejudice attributed to others. Also, this can be, yes, you don't accept, or you have your own preconceived ideas about something, and you attribute to others. Because the problem with the gossip is that there's no factuality, right? The person doesn't really know if the other person, so you can't really say something about. Like I was watching this course the other day, and then the instructor in Conscientiology, he was saying, nobody can go into our micro universe. No one. So for us to be able to know exactly how that person feels, then we would have to ask the person. Right? Even if you have, and we're going to get to that, even if you have someone who's really good with, perception, and I think the more we know, the more we have an understanding of ourselves, we would know that that is a fact, because you know how you behave, and you know how you feel, and you know how hard it is for you to get to the point that you realize, yes, and how sincere you have to be with yourself to know, okay, no, I have this. Actually, I was pointing out the fingers to that person, but it's actually, I have more of this than the person, right? So all of this, it's a very psychosomatic manifestation, right? Let's move on. Next slide. So of course, it's a conflict creating rumors, right? Because it's rumors. The person, for some reason, can create a lot of rumors, and it can create conflicts. It's intoxicated work environment, of course, the workplace, and I studied this a lot at workplace, right? I have worked for many different organizations and companies, and it's all the same. There's a lot of very similar characteristics, that if falls into that. So it's interesting, but it is an intoxicated work environment, because there's no, and I mentioned about distrust among all, and that's what it creates. So I have been reading about the research that they have done in specifically in work environment here in the US, and a lot of it is because of, and I'll mention that there are some reasons why people do gossip in workplace. Yeah? So of course it can breach professional confidentiality, right? Because if the person is so anti-cosmoethical, and if the person is so unprofessional, they might open up, they might say something that it was in a professional setting that the person might said, or that the person, this is usually in therapy or something like that, or HR interview, or, things like that the person can, disclose. There is also, I noticed this in workplace, there is also a pathological satisfaction in watching people, in watching others, and which is very psychosomatic, and which is also very common in work situations, that, they're snooping in someone's computer, or, you know, trying to see what the person is emailing others and things like that. It can be that. So another thing, the problem is not intellectual, right? The person can be intellectual, have a lot of mental somatic capacity like we all, but it's moral. It's a moral problem, yeah, that allows you to do that, to cross that line or not. Yeah, so it's that. And also people have a wild imagination. I have had instances at work that sometimes you are talking to the person, or sometimes even with friends, that what happened is that the person, you are talking and the person, I could see and perceive and sense the person already creating her own adding up to the story. I sometimes, right, Marcel is shaking his head. It's really interesting to see that. I have not, so this is an ongoing research, guys, that I'm still working on each day. You know, sometimes you learn certain things, and each day I have to think to myself, you know, and feel, okay, it's a habit that it's a new habit. It's something that each day I become stronger in positioning myself energetically, because it is an energetic position that you create. But I'll talk about that in a little bit. But let's go there. The wild imagination is something really interesting to pay attention if we do, or we see on when others are doing it, right? And if we understand about energy, sometimes we can see that too. Next. Okay, so I could not talk about gossip without talking about, especially being Brazilian, right? Gaiasa is a person that someone actually casually mentioned about. He did a research. He wrote a book. He wrote many books. And one of his books, it's on the 15th edition, the book, the manual about gossip. So he writes, for him, gossip is the most legitimate expression of social stupidity. And he says that because it never gets the right person at the right time. Yeah, he adds that. So, and it is true, right? It's like, it's silly because it never gets the person at the right time. It doesn't solve any problem. And he thinks that it's related to, it is an expression from, hold on, because I can't see. Gossip is the expression from anxious boredom of those who always do the same thing and are slowly dying that swamp sameness. But my point here is boredom. Boredom, when you're bored, you change to do silly things. You know, you might just, you're bored. Or you're bored with your life, with your partner, with your job, with your lack of engagement in your existential program, perhaps, or whatever that might be. Boredom creates that. It's the one of the most common reasons why people gossip in at workplace. So I found that very interesting, and it makes total sense, because if you are not bored, if you are engaged in your life, you're enjoying your life, and you don't have time for that. Yeah, it's like you really do not have time for that. Like, you know, my time is so precious that I don't have time for this. Next. Especially if you're not 25 anymore. So, okay, extraphysical gossip. We're gonna go right in. So I put the same things, except that I changed to the extraphysical consciousness. So it's any type of gossip or conversation or malevolent, casual, or unconstrained para-conversation or reports done by extraphysical consciousness about other consciousness typically involve details that are not confirmed as being true. So what I have been noticing, when I wrote the debate, I put it there because Valdo, as you know, he wrote fofinha for facts, right? In Portuguese, fofinha for facts. And I noticed after the the defense of my debate, that I started to perceive more. While there, I perceived the extraphysical team. And then another reason why I noticed and I started investigating the extraphysical gossip, well, one is because we talk about multidimensionality, right? So it's impossible not to consider this, since it's one of the basic principles of conscientiology. I learned this in 1994, I think, when I first took the classes and on the IIPC, and it was class number 2.3. The numbers were all different, but all of us would know that it's that classic class that talks about intruders and helpers. All right, so it's been a while. And at the moment I heard that, the same way that the moment I heard don't believe in anything, have your own experiences, that triggered something in me. And I became volunteer immediately after the lecture. Also, that about intrusion triggered something in me, that I realized that, yes, of course, this makes a lot of sense. And I didn't mention before, I didn't plan to study gossip. It just happened. It was one thing after another. And out of 3 titles, they chose gossip. So I wrote about gossip. So, and the other topic was ego defense mechanism. The other one I don't remember, but that is, I feel this is a very basic concept that we all understand. So next. So we are all here. I just put this here to refresh in case I had anybody that was not familiarized with Conscientiology, because I invited some friends, but they not busy. But so those things, and that is how it ties with the extraphysical gossip, what it is, the pathothosenes and the orthothosenes, and then the multidimensionality. Also a classic, basic concept, right, that also triggered me, right? This was actually before gossip, it was thosene, and they triggered something in me. So that's the same idea there. So I can elaborate. So let me, when I start thinking about other people, or when I'm thinking about tosenating, right, negative thoughts, either if I'm already speaking about that person, or if I'm not, the extraphysical consciousness, what I do, I create that coupling, right, or that connection with the extraphysical consciousness. They are also connected with that person. But I think if this is clear, since we are all, I think that we don't have anybody here for the first time, right? And Nato has been a volunteer already, right? Okay, because I don't know him. Okay, cool. So I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna bore you guys with this, right? Because otherwise, so let's move on. Let's go to the juicy part. We already know, and I'll have time to come back to this later, but we might not have that much time. So extraphysical intruder, the consciousness that exercise a direct or indirect negative action upon another, whether by disturbing, provoking, pursuing, and malevolently influencing through waves of those scenes. So it ties to the previous slide. So through waves of thosene. So that's how they get to us. The moment I start thosenating, and the moment I start even going forward and talking about someone else, I'm creating this very strong connection, not only with my intruders, but also with the intruders of the other person. So it becomes very strong. That's why it's hard. It's not easy to stop gossiping about someone else. You have to make a strong decision. And even though you understand that, sometimes the person cannot have a difficulty in stopping it. Yeah. So I have another, so this connection with if I have orthothosenes, and if I have pathothosenes, and of course the extraphysical intruders, right, that, it's the is the cup of cake, you know, is the perfect connection there for us to make that huge. I even told Marcelo the other day, because I was I want to do the drawing that I remember the instructor doing it, and that I used to do in class, and Carla is an instructor too, and that we used to do in class to illustrate this, right? So the two little dolls talking about someone else, and then they have their intruders, and then the intruders of the intruders, and plus the blind guys, right? That is also a type of intruder. But so these waves of those scenes that comes to us, it's the right the how they can get to me. They can get to information and sending keeping me going. But I don't want to discuss this now. Let's go to the next slide, because I have we're going to get to this point in a little bit. So then this is also something that I have been noticing, okay, in different places. So the worst type of pathological interdimensional personality, the worst type of pathological interdimensional personality is the intraphysical consciousness intruder. He or she is actually the classic ambassador of the paratropospheric conglomerates of ill extraphysical consciousness. So that's how I feel, and I perceived, and I found this in the projectology, and I think this is very relevant, because some places, and I have noticed this, you have that person that it can be an intraphysical consciousness that is intruded, right? And they know they are interacting. I unfortunately, but you know, it gave me a lot of learning, but you know, it's always something that, you know, that you have to work hard to, when you see something like that. And it was in a workplace. So you see the intraphysical person who is being influenced by an intruder and knows about it. Some people do not know, but some people know. And in this case, in a workplace that I worked before, I noticed that the person was perceptive. She has, or he had parapsychism, but it was coupling, you know, with intruders that would actually, it could be your own intruders or intruders of someone else, but you know, it creates that mess. Let me know if it's not clear. We'll clarify more about that later, but this is something common. The other thing that is common also in workplaces that I'm noticing is that more people know about energy, much more than I expected. You know, in classic, outside of our group of outside of Conscientiology, and not only Conscientiology, I know we all know that other groups know more about parapsychism, but in places that you do not expect, right, people can be very perceptive and be, you know, trapped in a situation like that. Next. So the symbiotic relationship, it ties to this, right? So the intraphysical gossip encourages the extraphysical gossip for facts. And also the extraphysical gossip encourages the intraphysical gossip through this mechanism. Yeah, so if we have intruders and blind guides, and we all have, so that is a really good, depending on the situation. And you know, everything is good when everything is kind of, when you are doing everything that it's, you know, we're not very aware. The moment that you become more aware and you start changing, or you want to change a habit that you have, then this is also a classic concept that we start, you know, people or extraphysical people and intraphysical people start not to like us that much anymore, right? Why everything was good and you were like in the status quo, doing the same things that you have been doing it for 20 years, 30, 40. piece of cake. When you start changing something, start going deeper in your self-research and start wanting to change and do something more in pro of your existential program, for instance, then we have what we call the extraphysical counterflow. Right? So this is something that happens all the time. Yeah, there's always this mechanism of, because we are never alone, right? This is also another concept that we talk very often. We are never alone. And this, ties to many other things. So let's go on. So then I want to just share here with you guys a little bit of how this research happened to me. Well, my technical self-research started more in the ECP1, right? When I started doing ECP1, because I started to go a little bit deeper with more technically understanding about myself and all of that. So I use all the techniques. If any one of you do not know, is there one of the courses from my IPC where, I started my self-research. And then the Conscientiological labs, right? Also, they're amazing and they, help a lot because you have that time. So I started doing that. Advanced 2 as well, the ACP2 as well, all of that. The 5-hour technique also was very helpful. This, proposed by Valdo, the 5-hour self-reflection. I think that is really, really helpful, right? You really go into that in a lot of depth. And of course, through the ACP1, just going back a little bit there, the ACP1 was the course that brought up the ego defense mechanisms, right? Because one of the classes, we talk about that. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But it's where you can go deeper. And then consciential therapy and self-consciential therapy as well. But consciential therapy, I did in Rio long time ago. One session when I went there in 97 for an advanced 2. And it was really interesting to hear, that perspective, to use, the extraphysical aspect of things and to broaden, our perspective that way. And consciential therapy, the therapist told me, this was later, she told me to look into the nonviolent communication, which is something that they study very well. And so it's called NVC, nonviolent communication. And it's a really interesting tool because you start learning what are your needs and values. One of the premises that they study is values, your needs and your values. So if your needs are met, so if you have all your needs taken care of, there's no reason to be angry at other people. There's no reason to be afraid. There's no reason to be envy. So he goes very deep into that. And I started studying about that, the nonviolent communication as they recommended. And it served me a very good deal. And so the premise that I like, that I remember and just repeating myself here because I think it's relevant, is that one of your having your needs met. So we cannot help others, we cannot be fulfilled and actually, and even execute our existential program to the fullest if we do not have our needs met. And this can be really hard for some people, yeah? So it's very interesting, and I will talk more a little bit about later if we need, and if you, but next, let's go to the next slide. I feel like we still have a lot of slides to go. And then the self-consciential therapy that, when I learned, I did with the therapy, well, in consciential therapy, they teach you to do self-consciential therapy, right? So, and I find this very useful for, and this is a tool that we don't stop doing it, right? Ideally, we would not stop doing it. So we investigate ourselves, we diagnose, we confront, and we overcome. When we overcome, we have that springtime, that boost of energies that makes us feel better, that makes us feel that yes, we can. And then that energy propels you to go further into your self-investigation. And then we keep going, right? And things, when we get more mature, right? We get more sincere with ourselves. We get more whole mature, I would say. So new ideas, new perspectives, and new behaviors, right? So we need to have new ideas. What are the researchers saying it, right? Is that anybody doing anything that might help me with this? I might be angry. Why are you angry? We have to find out. Angry of what? You have no reason to be angry. Why are you angry? Nobody can live their entire lives angry, right? And just gossip themselves throughout life. You know, it's not what a good existential program is, and not what most of us, I would say, came here to do. So new ideas, new perspective, new behaviors, and the sustainability of that, right? So next. So, okay. So I wonder, when I was, as I mentioned before, the ego defense mechanisms, I think sometimes it's good for us to remember what that means. So quickly here, habits or pretense, affectations to protect ourselves. It's because we are hurt. We want to protect ourselves from something. We don't even know what it is. It's an unconscious thing. We protect ourselves from feeling anxiety or guilt, and we are unconscious that we are doing that. It's natural and normal, but can develop into something more, into a disease, right? So, such as anxiety, high states of anxieties or phobias, obsessions, or hysteria. Next. So we're gonna go over this now because it ties, the research that I did to do the ego defense mechanism is because it has a straight connection with gossiping. Okay, and I'll give you an example right off the bat. So control, manipulation or intimidation through information. Fake news is a classic one. Or you try to control what you are afraid of, right? Of someone will say something, or you try to pinpoint, if you say it first, or if you talk about that person, you can, you intimidate that person because you have some sort of control. You try to control the situation. It's very common for us to use control this way. It ties with gossip, and not only ties to gossip, of course, but there is other instances of controlling any kind of people or situation or anything like that. Denial, so remember that we are all linking this here to gossip, okay? So denial, so intruders, they love to control us. That's what they want to do. When they feel they're losing control, they try to do all they can to continue manipulating us. So if we have that's the relationship. So it ties to the extraphysical gossip as well, okay? So denial involves the refuse to accept the reality. So in gossip, for our purpose here, denial can be the real intention not assumed, okay? So you deny the intention, and we're gonna go into that. Oh, my intention was good. Really? I don't think so. So we have to be really honest. And the passive aggressive, indirectly expressing anger, backbiting. I love this expression, backbiting, because you are actually biting, right, on someone else's back. Malicious talk about someone who is not present. So next. Projection. Projection is a classic too, right? So we project to others our motives. It can be the intention. My intention was good, but I'm projecting that, feelings or traits. Or we can say, she doesn't like me, but in reality, I don't like that person. Yeah, so it takes a lot of, the 5 hours technique for us to realize it. Stop saying that she doesn't like me, since because it's me who do not like that person. Or he or she, or he is very controlling. I have a classic example because I worked with someone, and when I worked with the person, I used to see, I started to notice how controlling he was. It's like, oh gosh, this guy's so controlling, so controlling. And other people had told me, have gossip about him to me, that yes, he is controlling. And I was like, so controlling, so controlling. And then I realized that I also, it wasn't my worst ego defense mechanism, but I had some more than now, but I had controlling, and I tried to control situations, my partner and things like that, that you try to, and I could, by doing my self-research, I noticed that the beauty of the ego defense mechanism that is there is going to be there. But once you notice that, that's the part of the self-research that we do in Conscientiology. Once we start doing that, what happens? It's no longer a mechanism of defense, pretty much, because you already know that you're projecting. So before you open your mouth to say something, you're already questioning yourself. But at the same time, you say, wow, I wonder if that is something here, right, for me to investigate. So projection also, most of gossip, relies on a lot of projection. Rationalization, the justification for anti-cosmoethical behavior. I wanted to help him or her, right? So you justify your behavior in the trying to help someone, but in reality, it was not that case. So next, regression is like going back to a younger condition, right? You are 50 and you have the maturity, the life experience and all that to behave like the 50-year-old woman or man, and you behave like you're 10, right? Doing things that you used to do, or really behaving more like a child, going back, or it's, I'm upset, so I'll kick this, or I leave, or I gossip even more because I'm entitled because I'm 10-year-old, but in reality, I'm not. Repression. You can also repress through disturbing or threatening thoughts from becoming conscious. It's not easy. That's why nobody said that evolution is easy, and us understanding ourselves, our motives, why we do things and this and that. It's not easy. And it's not gonna always be easy. We'll have times that will be difficult, and we all know this by now. If we have been studying and teaching Conscientiology for so many years, we know this. But it's that kind of using all the resources we have in Conscientiology that I don't know anything that would go as deep, right, as we do, because we bring in the multidimensionality. It's priceless, right, if we are serious about our existential program and evolution, I would say. So next. So all of this that we spoke allows us to identify our bad habits. Do I do? And, when I do, it is what level of habit it is and what I'm going to do to overcome this. And the identification through the mechanisms of defense, we get to the true nature of the intention, right? No, I did have bad intention. I cannot say something bad about someone with good intentions. There's no ifs or buts, yes? So it is what it is. My intention at that moment, it doesn't mean that I'm a horrible person, but at that moment, my intention was ill. And I have to say that I will probably welcome that bunch of extraphysical consciousness that has the same level, right, of intention. So next. Okay, so the intention, if it's if we're still in doubt about the intention, if it's uncosmoethical, it's egocentric. We're thinking about ourselves. If it's cosmoethical, it's altruistic. So there's no ifs or buts. Okay, so if we have doubts, a lot of people have doubts about the intention, and there is a book about the intention experiment that I actually like very much. It's interesting to see, you know, our intentions can dictate or extend, right, and form that our enhance our aura, our energetic field, or not, right? So there is, it's very simple. It's a simple math, and there's no ifs or buts. That's pretty much it. Next. Okay, so the parafactology, energetic contamination, the facts, extraphysical facts that I have been observing, energetic contamination of people and places, right? So if I'm gossiping about someone, I'm contaminating that other person. The person is being the pseudo-passive that we spoke about, but allowing that to happen, right? So if you don't want that to happen, so the person can stop that. And we're going to talk about that. So contamination, we are contaminating people and places. And the places, work environments and houses and families, they do get contaminated, and the place is heavy because of that. Pathological energetic couplings, right? We're coupling with the other person that we're speaking, and we are coupling, allowing the coupling with the extraphysical intruders, okay? I can guarantee you that a helper would not be in the mix of this, right? But don't believe anything, right? Have your own experience. But based on my experience, this is a no. There's no helper involved in something like that. Energetic vampirization, because we might be vampirizing the other person by not even knowing. The other person might be vampirizing ourselves, because that is that back and forth. And the extraphysical intruders vampirizing both of us and everybody else involved. Yeah, so all this, the connection, right, of the vampirization, of sucking energies from other consciousness and places, you know, that goes through when we are engaged in gossiping. Energetic repercussions, a lot of them, right? A lot of energetic repercussions. We have all these kinds of repercussions, both from, if I'm gossiping about another concept that we all know well, that energies, and for those that do not know, but energies has no distance, right? I'm here, I can feel something that is happening in China, right? For instance, so there's no difference. So this concept, it's known, we know, but on top of that, if the person is sensitive and it has a more, the parapsyche is more developed, if something is happening in Brazil or in China, like I said, or in Europe, the intensity of that, the person can feel it, right? The person can have, you know, energetic repercussions. So also this energetic repercussion would tie it up to the paradox of self-aggression, because if I'm gossiping and creating all the energetic connection with extraphysical intruders who are also gossiping by intuition, giving us intuition and taking us out of the body to snoop around, as we're going to mention a little bit, or giving us, you know, enhancing our third eye so we can have a travel clairvoyance, or whatever that might be, any of the phenomena that can be, as we all know, also intruders can also do that. Because of that, the energetic repercussion, not only the energetic repercussion of the victim that I'm causing on the victim, but if I'm the villain and I am gossiping about someone else, I am receiving that energetic repercussion also, right? One thing, it can be that they through stimulation of the laryngeal chakra. That's why it's harder. I think I had that in here somewhere, that what happened is your laryngeal chakra can get stimulated, and the more you gossip, that's why people sometimes, when you engage in gossiping, it's harder to stop. Yeah, so I had to ask the people to do this, engage in it, and then try to stop it. Consciously doing that is like doing like an experiment, that you consciously engage in it, so for you to see the power of that. So
Simone?
what we call in it's what we call maintaining, the groups of extraphysical neg intruders that are, it's accustomed to do that, right? With any habit, it can be any habit. It can be habit of drinking or pornography or any kind of heavy duty that it will allows them to keep plugged in to us, to a group, to a team, to whatever that might be. So maintaining to be part of these wheels of neg intruders, it's something that, also we wanna try to, when I started perceiving this more and more and more and more and more and more, and noticing that, how this mechanism works, and the manipulation that we spoke before, it ties into this as well, right? So it's quite interesting to start perceiving more of that, and I understand, more and more as I live, why Valdo would reinforce so much about the vibrational state, and the development of parapsychism can be quite good if it's tied to our level of to our cosmoethics, right? Because parapsychism without cosmoethics, for me, is devolution. You go backwards. But if you put both of them, parapsychism and cosmoethics together, then it can propel. To me, without that, it won't help much. Next. Help in our context here, right, guys? So the paradox of utmost self-aggression is that the more you gossip, the more you harm, the more harm you induce or cause to yourself because of all of that respect. So it's very clear to me, and became more and more clear as we study more and we understand more about multidimensionality, because it's a very clear, obvious thing, but not that you just know intellectually, but that actually in real practice on your day-to-day, and that how can they try to manipulate you and to talk about, or to create the rumors that cause conflicts in workplaces, very common, in families and things like that. So all of this, this self-aggression is because of the energetic repercussion that we cause in ourselves. Because if I'm pathognosticating, that is harmful for my entire holosoma, right? It's all the entire, all the bodies that we have, and also to other people and to the environment that I'm in. So then I am intoxicated, the environment that I'm in is intoxicated, and I have more intrusion. So it is a utmost self-aggression, in my opinion. Next. So I like to, we're getting to the end, and I think, are we good on with the time? Am I talking too
Yeah.
fast?
No, you're talking at a good pace, and we are good in time. Okay, we can manage that time for the questions with the
Yes, I
what
want
you
to
have
let
now.
it, I want us to be able to have a discussion. Okay, so I like this quote because it helps me sometimes when I think about that. So if I'm, strong minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and weak minds discuss people. I do agree with that in a way, because when it helps me to focus on things that really matter. Yeah, so ideas matter more than people when it's in relationship to gossiping, right? Not that we don't care about people and we don't want to help them, but in terms of finding out. So if we were more interested in social media to learn more about what's most relevant, not so much on the soap opera aspect of that. So it keeps me also, when we think and absorb and reflect about this, it can be something that I feel we can use as being prophylactic. Next. The principle of disbelief, which I don't believe in anybody or anything. I want to have my own experiences. So it's applying the principle of disbelief. If I have a question, if I have a doubt, and I don't care if you are the CEO of a company or not, I have the right to apply the principle of disbelief and find out direct, and having a direct conversation and directing, finding out the truth. So applying the principle of disbelief, I think, is very useful for everything, for in any instance, right? Because we do because of the work we do, but also to avoid gossiping. Because if you have a question, ask the person. Why do we need to be trying to find out, or if we have a comment? But if we are focusing more in ourselves and less on others, they start bothering us also. There's no much of that. Nobody bothers you. You bother yourself, perhaps. So we have to go back into our self-research and find out what's going on there, right? Where is the anger is coming from? And then the victim, not the villain. So be the victim. Let them gossip about you, but you do not gossip about anybody. So that's my principle now. Of course, I did gossip. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking about this, right? Or I could, but I'm not. I'm not a special consciousness, right? That has never gossiped in their life. So, but I find, and Valdo talked about that as well, that you should be the victim, but don't be the villain. So if people are going to gossip about us, it doesn't matter, right? Anna left, I guess, but I don't see her there. But she said something about a saying. There's a popular saying, but it's that, if whatever is happening is really not as relevant as to what we are doing it. And I have been saying this for a few years now, that I don't care about what other people are doing as much, even though that affects us, right? There is energetic repercussions to other things if you are involved, if you are in any kind of relationship. But I'm more concerned with what I do, seriously. So that's why this idea, if I'm not the victim per se, because I can defend myself, but I'm not going to be the villain. So it's better to be on the victim side than to be the villain side. Also, the application of the paradox of anticipated forgiveness. You go to a workplace, you know that there will be gossip. Most likely, I was fortunate enough to work in a place in LA, almost zero. Yeah, really, really interesting. It was a tech company, and for 7 years I was there. It was really amazing. Different culture, it was a different culture too, but it is possible. I have seen it, but most of the places have some sort of gossip. So the application of the paradox of anticipated forgiveness, I heard this from Valdo once also. I have to mention him because it was my reference point. So, and he said a lot about that. Oh, you are all forgiven, or I don't know why he would say, but I think it's a good principle to apply that, or the paradox of anticipating. I have that in my verbiage because on you already know that something might happen, and you apply that. Okay, you already forgiven. Whatever happens, I'm already, I can use this principle and apply it, or the paradox. So then the principle of self-exemplary is also that we use a lot, right, in conscientiology, to be the example, right? Let's be the example and not worry much about but if we, in the prophylactic measure, it helps me, for me, I feel like I don't want my friends to see me gossiping anymore, or see that I'm gossiping about someone and doing, with all that I know, or even in my family as well, right? They know that I'm involved and studying this for years, and I have, and I'm 53 years old, and I really don't want to give that example, to anyone. I feel like it's like, it gets to a point that it's not okay anymore, for me personally, right? So this can be a prophylactic measure for us to use, I feel it. Yeah, so the principle of disbelief, the victim and not the villain, the application, because once we have all of this in place, it's easier for us not it's easier to sustain when you are in that movement, to not repeat that or to continue with that habit. Yes. So next. And then we have here, this is the same one. It is the same one in a different format, but there's one thing that we left out. That's okay. Is setting energetic boundaries. I knew something was missing. I find this to be really important. You set boundaries also. I call it energetic boundaries because I have been studying and learning about boundaries. And it's important when you set boundaries, energetic boundaries, with the extraphysical team that is around that might want to trying to manipulate or to get something out of it, and also boundaries with other people. And this comes for if we are engaging in a conversation, we energetically change that conversation, the flow of that conversation, right? You can change that flow into something else. So you, by doing that, it requires energetic presence, because you have to cut the person and you have to have the strength. If you are too vulnerable to the extraphysical consciousness, then you get into the flow of that pathological conversation. But if you are, if you set your grounds, so if that conversation comes, you will have the strength, the mental even strength, because you're not going to be influenced energetically and mentally by extraphysical consciousness, and you are more prone to sustain that and to set the boundaries and to change the course of the conversation. Next. Okay, and this is our last, I think is our last slide. Let me think. Yes. Where Valdo says that the orthopensatas, or the ortho thoughts, which is you are what you speak, or you are what you say, right? And silence, and is I would like to, in terms of communicability here for us, suits us well. And then that is also what we are, what we do, right? Because it's the last part of our THOSENEs. And then that silence is the clever act of knowing exactly when to turn off the laryngeal chakra. Yeah, because that has a lot to do with the connection with the extraphysical dimensionality, intruders, and might be influenced by that. You might setting the boundaries where you don't just be quiet, but you don't feed that type of conversation. And then you go one step above, which is setting the boundaries and changing the course of the conversation also. So I find these two ortho thoughts very descriptive of our discussion. And what is our next slide? Okay, so we have questions and answers time.
It's questions and answers in the
What
excellent
time is it?
presentation. That's 2:11 now, Miami time, 2:12. Okay, I think that we can proceed with 30 minutes session for questions.
Okay. Yes, let's see what questions and comments, and let's discuss about the time, the topic.
Well, anybody feel free to open the microphone and do the questions, or to put the questions on the chat, whatever you prefer.
And if you don't, I'm gonna ask, huh?
Yeah, and I
you
can
don't ask,
warm up.
I'll ask you.
I can warm up a little bit with one question. You mentioned about one of the places where you work that it was with almost zero gossip in the place. That's not something very common. Because I would like to ask you, what would be the relation between this gossip, especially the corporate gossip, and the sense of power of having information, spreading this information? Okay, can you talk a little bit about that, Simone?
Absolutely. Yes, it was a tacky. I talk about the place that I worked at had almost no gossip, and it was a tacky company. And well, the boss, the leader of the company was it's an Indian person, consciousness from India, and it was a Buddhist, and was very direct. Meetings every week and very direct, and lunches together, and they had a ping pong ball on the conference room. Was a relaxed, the classic tech companies of the US, of the Silicon Valley kind of thing. And I think what he did was he understood, he was very sensitive, had projections and things like that. So he understood about the multidimensionality. So anytime there was something, he would just target, and he would say, and I remember him asking someone, why are you so angry? Someone that was working there. Yeah. So we had a situation, and the person, why are you so angry? So he was a very direct, straight to the point, no flu, it's like, okay, no, we can't have this here. And I remember him saying, and I had projections that perceiving the projections with him in meetings, and perceiving that, and then I had some conversations with him. He knew he didn't know actually at the beginning that I was involved in things like that I was involved in teaching Conscientiology. But then we found out about that, and he knew. So I personally think, even now that I said that to you, I think it's because of his parapsychism that he didn't allow that to happen. I think once you know that for sure, and you are seeing it, and you have an understanding of how detrimental that is, then you're not going to let that happen in your house. You're not going to let that happen in your workplace. If you're in charge, you're going to do everything you can to stop that. And then you asked, the other question was,
yes, the relationship between gossip and the sense of power.
Sense of power.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you were, there are classic cases that in work environment, you have someone bringing you other gossip. So if you're in power, you have someone, and you motivate that. You don't stop that because your cosmoethic doesn't allow you to do that. And you prefer to have that because you think it's normal. So you have someone that brings you all the gossip of the office, of the floor, right? So you have that sense of knowing more and knowing what you need to do, knowing what you need to know. Perhaps you don't need to know all of that, but I see that happening a lot. And it's a classic type of person that, you know, that you can see that fits that pattern and even that title position that would do that. That's what I have been noticing. So and that, you know, that creates a lot of intrusion, right? And it creates, looking at the multidimensional aspect of things, is because of that, you know, gives you more power.
Simone.
Makes sense? Yes. Yes,
I
Anna.
was thinking here what you were talking about, and Marcelo asking about power. Could you please relate, you know, gossiping with an attempt of social control or group control, you know, for people to do what is expected from them to do, and gossip is an instrument to reach that situation. And
Yes.
also the envy, the jealous about other people, and how gossip works in a way to diminish. It's an instrument to diminish the other person. Could you talk about a little bit more about that?
Absolutely, Anna. Yes. Well, you know, control nobody has control. So it's you know, to the fullest, right? So it is an illusion, but it's also a lot related with fear. So the person is so far, so disconnected. I feel that the person is so disconnected from their own reality that there's so many layers in there that needs to come out for the person to get rid of the fear. Because in places like that, imagine how you're going to be trying to control a group. Or you said about controlling the group to do what the leader wants.
Either way, it's a family or workplace or a group of friends, and especially family. You sit and you start to hear people talking, and you know, and they usually not if they are not doing what is expected them to do. It's expected from the core values of that people, the group, you know, or the family. They are not doing what is expected theoretically, you know, and then they start to talk about these people.
Yeah. Well, you know, imagine that. It's like the person, it is related to the ego defense mechanism that I mentioned about when you are trying to manipulate, you have that sense of power. Yes. And you might have some power because of the position that the person is, whatever it is. Let's say the person has some power. But it's so disconnected. The lack of for in our case, the lack of self-research and really doing the, you know, the overcoming part, because if you just staying there in the knowing, the diagnosing, but you don't overcome anything, you don't, you know, go to the other side of the game, right? It's like if you're always on the same side of the game. And this controlling issue, it's something so popular, right? So common everywhere. All of us, we have some sort of and some wanting to control some to a certain extent. It's the extent and how we do it, and is it necessary, right? Is it needed? And how to get to control that, that's what is the core. And I feel, Anna, that it's once we do more self-research and go do more consciential therapy, more self-consciential therapy, we kind of start to letting go of that, because you understand that you're not in control of anything, you know. So you can just disarm tomorrow. What kind of control do you want? that you have no control of anything. So it's an illusion. That's why I say it is an illusion, and it is like it is an emotional thing. Yes, the person is very afraid. It's fear. It's fear. It's based on fear completely. And envy, on the other hand, it's similar to that because it's a kind of an emotion. And actually, Gayasa mentions about that. Imagine the disconnection. I was thinking about that yesterday. I was like, this is such a disconnection from the self, right? From us, from who we are as a consciousness, as a self, to be wanting to be someone else. You want to have what the other person has. Well, you're so lost. We are so lost when we have the I'm saying, but think about it. And we all have instances of that. I certainly had times that, oh, I wish I was, this and that. Oh, I wish I had that too. I had thoughts like that, and I think it's normal because I was not connected to myself. That's the time of my life that I look back, I was like, yeah, I had not done enough self-research and self-overcoming. I was disconnected. I was not doing the things that I feel I have to be doing it. And then, yes, the envy would come. Even people, and Gayasa mentions about that, and he mentions that there are two types of gossip. There's the gossip. One is the envy one, based on envy, because you gossip because you want that place. And because you cannot have, you're going to gossip against that person. Yeah. So you want to be, you won't admit, but you want to have something that that person has. You can have that. And, oh yeah, out of anger, again, you gossip because you are disconnected to yourself and you are hurting, you are afraid, you are hurting, you are envy and angry. And then the proud side, but I won't go back to that right now. But did that answer your question?
Yes, most definitely. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the question.
Hi, Simone. I was just here wondering about what Anna said. I don't know, politicians now, they seem to be, they don't use their intellectuality anymore. They gossip about each other most of the time here, at least here in the United States. I think it's not a American privilege, if I can say that, because I think it's spread it all over, politicians.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, in general, they're like that. So I just, I was wondering, thinking about it, and also on top of that, because here, again, as an example, unfortunately, our president, he tweets a lot. And he's most of the time tweeting something or things that aren't true at all.
Yeah.
And they don't, it's just like, what do you think about it? Like the role of social media. I know social media, I mean, there's all these people behind it, but these days with Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, and all those tools, to where you don't have to be face-to-face to gossip. You can just tweet and put the information out there, the called fake news and everything. What is your take on that?
Yeah. Well, what I feel is that my taken is that people do what they can to get what they want, right? So he's using everything he can with his level of cosmoethics, right? And what the problem I see, Renato, on the other side is that people are buying into that. So if we're still buying into it, believing everything he's saying, everything he's tweeting, and all his lies, because that is so clear now, right? Everybody knows that he's lying into his teeth, and there's no question about that anymore, at least for us here. So it's amazing how we have to, the boundaries that we have to set and not get into that game. And that is by what? Studying, right? We study, we think, we don't believe, we apply the principle of disbelief, so we can use our critical thinking, and even if some of the things that he is saying, because what he's trying to do is to win the election, right? That's what he's trying to do. He's going to use everything he has to be able to win the election. So it's the classic type of intrusion, right? That you try, in this case, he's intraphysical, trying to use everything he has to manipulate people to believe in what he's saying so he can get the benefit from it. Classic strategy to continue in power, right? To get what you want, regardless if that is altruistic or not. That's not what he's concerned about it. So I feel the bottom line is that we have to do our homework, because we cannot change him, correct? We cannot change him, but we can vote. We can vote, right? And we can certainly learn about, this mechanism that he's using. And that's our society, isn't it? That's the school hospital that we are in. And there's a friend of mine tells me the other day, he just sent me a text. And the more I live, I realize that it's more a hospital than a school. And I have to say, I'm getting there too. I'm getting there. For me, it's more a hospital than a school. But I want to be in the school. Yeah. Right. So I don't want to be in the hospital. I want to be in the school side of it. Exactly. I think that's how we.
In the hospital, just working, right?
Exactly.
Yes, like Carla. Carla is a nurse. Exactly, right. Carla. Yes, and the para nurse, and we become the para. Just the hospital just to work.
Simone, when Anna was talking about like when the person likes to talk about other person and diminish, I was thinking about maybe because the person is like have low self-esteem, because sometimes, right, because I know this person that when we say something, oh, this person did this in a good way, like complimenting, like, oh, I'm so happy. But you know what? She had time to work. She didn't work. No, she had time to study. She didn't work. So because of this, it was easy for her. But we don't know, like you said in the beginning, we were not there to know. Maybe she was studying even more, right?
Yes,
so
until 5 o'clock in the morning.
Exactly. So to me, I don't know when she said that thing, and sometimes what we say about others say more about ourselves than other thing. Because to me, it was like, okay, you want to justify because you didn't get it, the thing, right? Instead of just being happy for the person, right?
Exactly. I agree with you, Carla. That's an interesting point, because I think, and that ties out with a lot of things that we're talking. Part of it, the having our needs met and having this higher self-esteem. We are calmer. We don't want to do that, right? It's a reflection, like the projection, reflecting something and some sort of anger. Because if you are a little negative about someone and you cannot compliment, I used to say that I do agree with you. I think it's part of the having a better self-esteem. And not everybody who's in power has good self-esteem, right? That's another thing. And we see this here in our...
Yeah, we know our president. It's like
we know our president. That is very classic, even though... So it's very interesting to see that, I think, that not everybody who are in power, have a good self-esteem. And also self-esteem is something that it needs to be, right, preserved, right? That we work on it. And then that's when I think we stop with envy, with anger, with making comments, and we start doing what? Complimenting other people, right? Let's copy what the helpers do with us, right? Not copy what the intruders do with us.
What I'm trying to do, Simone, is trying to even focus on the strong traits. Like, okay, but this person has this thing that I like about us, and this, right? And I noticed, like I had this family member that we were really close. But I noticed that every time we were talking about someone else. Never about ideas, someone else. And then I start like to pay more attention. You know what? We don't talk so often anymore, because every time I want to talk about ideas, and then we talk for a little. Oh, okay, I need to go by. So it's strange, because we were really connected. But I think that the connection were more when we were talking about other people.
Other people, you see. And Carla and I, we work together. So we work together here, and we know each other. And I agree, Carla, because it's a decision that you know, if the other person is not in that same pace, it's not interesting anymore, right? You know, talking about other people, it's not interesting. I'd rather talk about, you know, the things that I'm doing, about ideas, right? And talking about and do and work, you know, if we working, I think also in ourselves, doing our things that we know it's part of our existential program, then we don't have that much time left to be worried about. Am I going to be worried about what other people are doing, or what my coworker is doing or not doing it? I'm like, guys, I really don't have, and I think this is, oh, Anna, this ties to your research for next month, because you were talking about aging, and they say that when you turn 50, if you are in a kind of in a pattern, in a positive pattern, it seems like your perspective start to change. And I think it's because we realize, hey, I don't have time to waste anymore, right? Mm-hmm. And we have friends, we can talk to friends and meet them, which is wonderful, but we're not going to be wasting time. I know people that it gets to the point that they are really concerned, and their lives become someone else focus. So they are focused on that. There's a sort of obsession. You see this in workplace. You know, the area that I work in business and accounting, but the area that I work, you can see things like that. Yeah, because the mechanism of defense, if it's not taken care, remember that they can become an obsession, a hysteria, a lot of things. Yeah, so it's a kind of interesting.
Simone, and did you notice any difference, like when you were working in California and then you came to Miami? That is something different, like it's more here, we have more gossip than there, or there is a lot of more influence from the Latin community, or not at all?
No, it's the same. Over there, I work with Americans as they could be, and a lot of gossip as well. A lot of gossip. The difference for me, and I think this is interesting, and that actually added to my research on the extraphysical aspect of it, and my understanding of the extraphysical gossip and all the relationship, is that I started to have and perceive people as being more parapsychic, that I didn't perceive as much before in the workplace. So people can be very quiet about it. They can be very quiet about it. And then, well, they started perceiving things with me, and I perceiving with them, that kind of thing. And and then also some of them probably Google me, you know, and then they, yes. So they know this, every now and then they'll mention, the consciousness, something that she does or something like that. It's like, yeah, I'm watching you. You know, so there's a lot of that. But God, I noticed, Carla, is that the people, no, the Latin community does not gossip anymore. And then others, and I think this is it's a habit that some people have, and they do use together with, in business environment, they use the business power, depending on the position, to do that. They are they are used to that. You know, they got used to that in some instances, which is a pity.
They
but
use
that
the
is,
gossip in their advantage then.
yes, yeah, they see it as an advantage, you know, but that can be a mechanism of defense as well, you know. It suits me, so I'm going to look into that. Well, I need to know about people, you know, I need to know what's going on, so go there. If you need to know, hang out with them, right? Oh, no, but that, you know, I have this position here, it's not going to look good. Well, it's not going to look good. We are talking about multidimensionality here, right? So it gets a little bit interesting when we look into, you know, into the different sides of it, right? And what we can do. And then, of course, it's an individual, what do we say, decision, right? How do I want to relate to that? Because, that's what I want to say, that I find it very interesting, is that I found that after I started doing this research, not only I have no desire and I don't want to set that example anymore as I did in the past, and I was actually in a position that I had, I would say, more power. It wasn't really power. I don't like this, but I had more responsibility. And that, for me, I see that as being a big responsibility. When you have the understanding that we have about multidimensionality, about this type of intruders that keep connected, plugged in to manipulate, to do, and we become that ambassador, if that is not going to bring me back to the paratroposphere, what else will? And I feel like setting that example, right? It's important.
And Simone, the presentation, the discussion has been wonderful. I think that you have 5 minutes for a last question, for some fine comments from you. Okay. Does anybody have a last question? Renato?
Yeah, I just would like to mention I'm really thankful for the presentation. It was really clarifying, and it really made me think, because one of the worst moments that I had to go through my life, this intraphysical life, involved with that. And it was really a very pathological person involved. Later on, I discovered that he was a stalker. And it was really embarrassing, because now I realize how much negativity, how much evil things he attracted to himself when he tried to literally play havoc with me using gossip. So I'm really thankful, and I really perceiving the reach of the issue. It's really serious. It's not a joke. It's
not a joke.
It's not.
It's
so
not,
thanks once
Sergio.
again. It's
Oh,
perfect.
Sergio, I'm so glad. So glad to it. So it was in a workplace, if I may ask?
To be short,
Okay.
I was in less than 1 minute. I was in a relationship, and this guy, he had been with this person before, and he didn't accept. Yeah. So he tried everything. You described it perfectly. He tried everything to, yeah. And
that's it, Sergio.
And that was someone I was supposed to trust. So,
Yes. Yeah. Even more hurting, right? When it's someone close to us. Absolutely. I'm very glad that you got some clarification, and you're right. It is something really serious. This is not a joke. Yeah. And then Renato, I think Renato wants to say something.
Yeah, I mean, I know that it's a complex thing, a lot of things has been said. If you could offer us just one tip to stay gossip free, what would that be?
One thing to be gossip free. for us here, well, think about it and model what a helper would do. Think about them. Think about, they would never, ever, ever do what an intruder do. Otherwise, they would not be a helper. So, and on top of that, I want to just say that don't sugarcoat. If it's gossip, it's gossip. Don't sugarcoat, because that creates, it doesn't allow us to overcome and to stop the bad habit. Yeah? But I think copying these two things, but if we model the ones that we know that really, right, have overcome this, or that will never do something like that, I think that would be, I didn't think about that, so you caught me out of surprise, but I'm going to think for the, but I think that no, it's actually very good that you asked that. But I think with all that we said, and I didn't write it down, but for me, I always think about that. I think a helper, not blind guide, I'm talking about a helper, right? With the full description of a helper, would never gossip. They don't gossip, right?
Thank you.
They permit they allow we have our free will and etc. And a lot of respect, right, to each other.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Simone. Thank you one more time for this wonderful presentation that you have here.
Thank you.
All the questions and answers. And
Yes.
I want to
Thank
invite
you.
the group. We have Ana Paula with us here. So September 6th, you're going to have the next presentation that will be from Ana about aging with lucidity. Okay, so you're all invited. It was a great session. And Ana, I'm waiting for you. Simone set the bar high today.
Now I'm in trouble. I'm definitely.
You're not in trouble. Bring it on. Bring it on.
Bring it on.
Bring it on. Okay.
Guys, thank you so much. Thank you. I want to thank Marcelo for, the initiative again. And thank you all of us for attending. It's really something that I didn't plan, but this research is just growing and growing. And I feel it's good to have the feedback and to have you guys here and to have, this couple hours to spend and discuss with you about this subject and the complexity of it. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
you. Wow.
An excellent
Thank
to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Big hug to all
Guys,
of you.
see you guys soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, Dulcie.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you, Dulcie.
Thank you for attending.